Good morning, Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday morning, Erev Shavuot, and we have a chance now to learn something special about the Chag. Before I start, I want to mention that this is a very important day for me, and I'm sure it is for you as well, because over the past 2.5 months approximately, we've been learning Tanya every morning, Chassidut, almost every morning, and as we approach the Chag of Shavuot, this has really been a special build-up, a special preparation for this Chag of Shavuot. We've been learning Torah and Pnimius HaTorah, which is very, very inspiring, and I'm very touched that you've given me the zechut to be able to learn together with you the special teachings of Chassidut. Now we're going to learn a couple of points in connection with Shavuot, because we just finished Perek Bet, chapter 2 in Tanya. And so I want to discuss a couple of points in regards and inspiration in connection to Shavuot. First of all, let's talk about the days leading up to Shavuot, because we're not at Shavuot yet. Soon we'll try to share a beautiful insight into Shavuot itself. But right now, I want to tell you about the days leading up to Shavuot. The 3 days leading up to Shavuot are the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of Sivan. And in Hebrew, these days are called Shloshet Yemei Hagbala, literally meaning the 3 days of limitations. In other words, Hashem said that before the Matan Torah, we have to have days when the mountain will be separated. There'll be literally like a gate, so or not a literal gate, but a configurative gate where we're not allowed to go onto the mountain. And that's where when it becomes holy. Now, if we think about this concept of that in preparation for receiving the Torah, we need to block off the mountain, and the mountain is not accessible for everyone to go on. This really gives us an insight into what Torah is all about. Usually, when we talk about relationship with Hashem, we want to talk about how everything is open and everything is love of Hashem and bonding with Hashem. It's all the above is true, but from here we learn something very special, and in my opinion, it's something very fundamental about how we come close, how we approach ourselves to connecting ourselves with Hashem and with the Torah. When it comes to connecting ourselves with the Torah, the number one thing is, even before we open the first page, is that we have to remember that there are limitations. There are boundaries. And when we realize that there are boundaries to holiness and relationship with Hashem, then we can start our relationship with Hashem. What are the boundaries? The boundaries are that Hashem is the one who dictates to us what we're supposed to do, and also what we're not allowed to do. Did you know that there are mitzvot aseh, positive mitzvot, and there are mitzvot lo taseh, there are prohibitive mitzvot? So most people will tell you that the relationship of the positive mitzvot are more bonding, more connecting, more accepting of Hashem. And at first glance, that's true. And one may argue that the prohibitive mitzvot are really, we don't do them, but it doesn't really bring out any strong, affectionate bond with Hashem. But in fact, our connection with Hashem is greater when we look at the mitzvot lo taseh, the prohibitive mitzvot. Because the prohibitive mitzvot give us boundaries. And Hashem tells us, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. There are 365 prohibitive mitzvot. And so the moment that we realize that we have limitations, then we can open up the floor and try to build on our positive relationship with Hashem. In fact, when it comes to a king, so a king tells you do this, do that. And he also tells you don't do this and don't do that. But do this, do that, pretty much anybody can tell anyone else. You could be a friend, you can not even know someone and say, can you please do this for me? Please bring me a cup of coffee, whatever. But when it comes to don't do this, don't do that, if you don't accept someone's authority upon you, then you won't do it. So how do you know the person's a king? How do you know the individual is a leader, rules over you? By the mitzvot lo taseh. There's a much stronger connection when we talk about the mitzvot lo taseh, the prohibitive mitzvot, even more than the mitzvot taseh. And this is a very strong lesson when it comes to any relationship, including education, parents, children and parents, and so on. Some people think that you have to give, and that makes a connection. Let's talk about a child in class. A teacher that thinks that if the child says, give me this, give me that, if the child wants to be wild, the child can be wild because I don't want to tell him no. I don't want to give him any limitations. The child might be happy now that you're letting him jump around and be wild. But years later, you're going to ask the child which teacher was the good teacher, which teacher was the bad teacher. Believe it or not, but most children will tell you that the good teacher was the one who gave limitations and said, listen, before the year and every morning, we are in class now. The teacher says to the children, we have a framework. This is the text. This is the quota. We have to act like this. We're not allowed to do that. And then, once that happens, once the child knows that there's a framework, the child feels secure. And then you can move on to teach. You can move on to even let the kids out 5 minutes early for extracurricular activity. But that all has to come after there's limitation. Once you have a limitation, then you can move on to do wonderful things. And that's and the same thing is by children. Children think that they want to have this kind of gadget or things that internet and all the stuff that children really should not have access to, and that is something which we have to realize that a child needs guidelines. The moment that you have guidelines, then you can move ahead and you can give them all kinds of great things. And the truth is, I believe it's also by spouses and employer and employee relationship, any kind of relationship that you have, there have to be, even if you don't say them, on some level there have to be guidelines. The moment that we have boundaries, then we can. The moment that we have boundaries, then we can move ahead and to have the most wonderful relationship possible. And therefore, leading up to the receiving of the Torah, we have the Shloshet Yimei Hagbala, the 3 days of boundaries. We're not allowed to go onto the mountain. There was not allowed to be marital relationships. They had to be pure. They had to be elevate themselves before receiving the Torah, which is the most precious thing in the world. Once you have that, then you can move ahead and you can have any kind of wonderful relationship with Hashem, and love of Hashem, and fear of Hashem, and bonding with Hashem. All the above is amazing. That's point number one. Point number two is something interesting what the Zohar says. The Zohar says that there are 3 things that are strongly bonded together. Kudsha Brichu, which means Hashem, the Torah, the Holy Torah, and Am Yisrael. The quote is as follows: Tlat ksharin mitkashrayin da. There are three knots that are bonded, that are connected one with another. You have the Hashem, the Torah, and Am Yisrael. So the famous question is, there are not three knots. There are really only two knots. Hashem connects with the Torah, and the Torah connects with Am Yisrael. So you only have two knots connecting. You only have two knots over here. And the answer is that in addition to the fact that Am Yisrael is connected to Hashem through the Torah, Am Yisrael is their own link. Their own direct link, their own direct connection with Hashem. And therefore we have over here three knots. Not only that, we have Galia V'Satim, the revealed level and the hidden level. We have two main, generally speaking, there are two main levels of how we have this strong bond. And each one of the three have revealed and have concealed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He reveals Himself occasionally to the world, but then there's a level of Satim. Then there's a level of Pnimiyut that can never be revealed, that ordinarily cannot be revealed. Then you have Torah. Torah has the revealed part of the Torah, which that's Nigla, and you have the concealed part of the Torah, Pnimiyut Torah, the mystical interpretation of the Torah, the mystical perspective of the Torah. Then you have Am Yisrael. You have the level of the neshama which comes down into the world, and that is one level. Then you have the deeper level of the neshama which remains above, and that's an entirely other level. And therefore, the revealed parts are connected one with another, and then you have the concealed part, which is on a totally deeper level. When we are about to receive the Torah now, we have to remember, number one, that there are two perspectives to the Torah. One perspective is the revealed, that's what we see, and the other perspective is the concealed part of the Torah. We accept tomorrow, we will hear the Torah reading, and we will receive both the revealed part of the Torah and the concealed part of the Torah, which is very, very uplifting. Then beyond that, we have to remember that the Torah is the one that connects us to Hashem. When we learn the Torah, because the Torah is more obviously spiritual, in order for us to be elevated and to connect ourselves to Hashem, we need the Torah. And every day that we learn the Torah, every minute that we learn the Torah, we are becoming elevated and we are connecting to the infinite HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, it is such a great mitzvah to learn the Torah. Not only that, but anytime we have a spare moment, we're not supposed to be doing all kinds of things of wasting our time. But the mitzvah is that whenever we have an opportunity, we have to learn Torah. Not only to set a specific time for learning Torah, but whenever we have a spare moment, we have to do our best to try to learn Torah. And therefore, this is a time when we have the Chag of Shavuot, we have to strengthen ourselves in the Limud Torah. We have to strengthen ourselves in the commitment and dedication for the learning of the Torah. In learning Torah, there's the minimum of learning Torah in the morning and in the evening. When we commit, whatever time it is, we have to learn to put our regular things away, our phone, our disturbances, in order that we should be able to focus exclusively on the learning of the Torah. At least for whatever amount of time that is, whether it's a half hour or an hour, or even 5 minutes. When the time that we're learning needs to be dedicated exclusively for Limud Torah. And then we know that we're focusing on the Limud Torah the way it's supposed to be. There are other things that we should be learning as well. We should be learning Chitat every day, which is the daily Chumash. If you take the Parsha of the week, and you divide it's divided already into 7 parts. Every day we do a portion of the Chumash and the Rashi. Tehillim can be divided into 30 days of the month. Every day we say the portion of the month. And then we have Tanya, which is divided into the days of the year, and every day we have the portion of Tanya. In addition to that, which was established, Chitat was established by the previous Rebbe, our Rebbe established the idea of learning Rambam. Maimonides, every day to learn the portion of Rambam. And for example, now we're learning the laws of Malva and Lova, of borrowing and lending. And when it comes to Rambam, you have 3 cycles. You have the cycle of learning 3 chapters a day, or you have learning 1 chapter a day, or the Sefer HaMitzvot. If you learn 3 chapters a day, then you'll basically be learning the entire Rambam, the entire 14 volumes of the entire Yad HaChazakah, the laws of the Rambam, within a year. Usually 3 weeks, less than a year. If you learn 1 chapter a day, then it's around 3 years. Once every 3 years, you'll be finishing the entire Rambam. And if you learn the Sefer HaMitzvot, it's according to the cycle of the 3 chapters a day. And then you finish the entire Sefer HaMitzvot, which is short paragraphs of each mitzvah, within the year. So this is besides the actual knowledge of learning all the mitzvahs of the Torah, we are fulfilling a special request from the Rebbe to learn Rambam every single day. So therefore, this is an opportunity for us to strengthen ourselves in all the Shiurei Torah. And if you're already learning that, then you can learn a little bit in depth, to learn with the other Mefarshim, other interpretations. And Bezrat Hashem, from the Chag of Shavuot, we will uplift ourselves and we will strengthen ourselves to be able to learn much more Torah and much more Chassidut. May we all have a Chag Sameach, Chag Shavuot Sameach. And of course, if you live here in Rechavia Nachlaot, we welcome you to join us for the davening. We actually changed the times a little bit from the email. I'm going to send out another message in Mirz Hashem soon. Tonight, this evening, and tomorrow evening, we start davening tonight at 7:15. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, not like we wrote in the email, at 8 o'clock a.m. And then the Aseret HaDibrot will be at around 9:15. And then it will be Yizkor afterwards. And tomorrow afternoon, Mincha will be at 7 o'clock, Bezrat Hashem. And then the same thing will be, Shabbat morning will be, davening will be at 8 o'clock. Since it's going to be outside and we don't want it to be too hot for you. So davening is at 8 o'clock. And then Mincha, Shabbos afternoon, is once again at 7 o'clock. So we look forward to seeing you over this Chag of Shavuot. And let's make sure that everybody, men, women, and children, hear the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best. Have a Chag Sameach. Toda Rabah. All the best.